My wife said her whereabouts weren't my business as she left for another secret weekend with her millionaire boss. At 2:17 a.m., my phone lit up with her desperate calls, 18 of them. I watched every single one ring, read every panicked text begging for help, and did absolutely nothing. That was the night I decided that mercy, forgiveness, and being the good guy weren't my business anymore either. My name is Alex Carter, and this is the story of how I dismantled two lives with the same cold efficiency I used to construct steel frameworks for skyscrapers. The kind of rage that burns slow and steady, that's the dangerous kind. The kind that doesn't explode but calculates. That's what I felt when I came home early from a month-long project in Wyoming, expecting to surprise Megan with flowers and maybe finally have that conversation about starting a family. Instead, I got the surprise of my life, and it wasn't the good kind. My truck engine cut off in our garage, and for a moment, everything felt right. The house we'd built together, the manicured lawn, the perfect suburban dream in Denver's nicest neighborhood. I grabbed my duffel bag, already imagining Megan's face when she saw me. We'd been married for 7 years, and despite the distance my work sometimes required, I thought we were solid. Rock solid. The kind of marriage people envied. I thought wrong. The front door was unlocked, which should have been my first warning. Megan was paranoid about security, always double-checking locks and setting alarms. She'd made me install a $1,500 security system just last year, claiming she felt unsafe when I traveled. Now I understood why she wanted to disable it so easily. But as I stepped into the foyer, my boots silent on the hardwood I'd personally installed, I heard something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Laughter. Her laughter, but not the kind she shared with me anymore. This was different, intimate, unguarded, the sound of secrets being whispered between people who shouldn't be whispering anything at all. I stood there in my own hallway, invisible in my own home, listening to my wife map out her betrayal with casual confidence that cut deeper than any knife could. The male voice was smooth, confident, dripping with the kind of arrogance that comes from money and power and never being told no. They were in the living room, probably on the couch I'd assembled with my own hands after carrying it up 3 flights of stairs, drinking wine I'd paid for with money earned through 70-hour work weeks, making plans with time they'd stolen from me. "Next Friday works perfectly," Megan was saying, her voice carrying that flirtatious lilt I remembered from when we first dated, when she used to look at me the way she was probably looking at him now. "Alex will be in Seattle for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 if the project runs long like they usually do. We can take the whole weekend at Silver Peak. I'll tell him it's a client. Emergency, some crisis that needs immediate attention. He'll believe it, he always does." The man laughed, low and predatory, the laugh of someone who takes what he wants and never faces consequences. "You're getting too good at this, Meg. Almost makes me wonder what other secrets you're hiding, what other lies you've perfected." "Don't worry, Daniel," she purred, and I could hear the smile in her voice, could picture her touching his arm, leaning into him the way she used to lean into me. "You're my only secret, my most expensive, most thrilling secret, my escape from the boring life I've been living." They laughed together, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, mind you, cracked. Like a dam that's about to give way but holds just a little longer. Building pressure, building force, building into something catastrophic that will destroy everything in its path when it finally gives. I could have walked in right then, could have confronted them, made a scene, thrown punches, become the cliche of the betrayed husband losing his mind in his own living room. But I didn't, because in that moment, standing in the shadows of my own home, with my duffel bag still gripped in white-knuckled hands, I realized something crucial about myself that I'd forgotten during years of being the good husband, the reliable provider, the man who played by the rules and colored inside the lines. I was a builder, yes, but I was also a destroyer when I needed to be. I'd torn down the structures before rebuilding them stronger, and right now, I needed to be the destroyer. I needed to tear down everything they thought they knew about me, about consequences, about getting away with betrayal. I backed out of the house silently, each step carefully placed, my military training from years ago coming back like muscle memory. got back in my truck, started the engine with hands that didn't shake despite the rage coursing through my veins, and drove to the Red Canyon bar where my friend James River was probably already 3 drinks deep into his evening routine. James had been with me in Afghanistan, had saved my life twice and killed for me once, and never asked questions when I needed help. If anyone would understand what I was about to do, what I was about to become, it would be him. The bar was exactly as I remembered, dim and smoky despite the smoking ban, filled with men who'd seen too much and women who'd heard too many promises. James was at his usual corner booth, nursing a bourbon neat, his eyes tracking me the moment I walked through the door. Those eyes, cold and assessing, saw everything. "You look like someone just told you your dog died," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "But you don't have a dog, so what happened?" I didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. The words stuck in my throat like broken glass. Finally, I managed, "Megan's cheating on me, with her boss, in my house, right now, probably in my bed." James didn't react with surprise or sympathy. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting this conversation for years. "How long you known?" "Found out about 20 minutes ago. Came home early, heard them planning their next weekend getaway. And you left instead of beating his face in?" "Because I have a better plan," I said, and something in my voice made James smile. Not a nice smile. The smile of a predator recognizing another predator. "I'm going to destroy them both. Completely. Financially, professionally, socially. I'm going to make them wish they'd never met each other, never met me, never been born." James signaled the bartender for another round. "Tell me what you need." The next week was a masterclass in self-control that would have impressed my old drill sergeant. I acted normal, came home from my continued business trip with a story about equipment delays and contractor problems, kissed Megan hello on the cheek while she flinched slightly, noticed how she couldn't quite meet my eyes and how her phone was face down on the counter. Always face down now. She was nervous, twitchy, constantly checking her phone with those quick, furtive glances that guilty people make when they think they're being subtle. I watched her like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope, cataloging every lie, every fake smile, every forced laugh. Every time she said she loved me while her phone buzzed with messages that made her eyes light up in ways I hadn't seen in years. I didn't confront her, didn't give her the satisfaction of tears or accusations, or the dramatic showdown she'd probably rehearsed in her mind. I was cold, methodical, robotic almost, starting to put together the pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know she was helping me solve. James, with his military contacts and complete disregard for privacy laws or ethical boundaries, started tailing her with professional efficiency. We got photos that made my stomach turn, timestamps that documented every lie, credit card receipts from hotels that neither of us had ever visited for romantic getaways we'd never taken. Daniel Hudson, 44 years old, CEO of Hudson Marketing Group, married with 2 kids in private school, worth about $40 million according to public records. My wife's boss. How disgustingly, predictably, pathetically original. But here's what Megan didn't know, what nobody knew except my accountant Gerald and my lawyer Lisa. 2 years ago, when Megan started acting distant, when the sex dried up and the warmth disappeared from her eyes like water evaporating in the desert sun, when conversations became transactional and love became obligation, I'd started preparing. Not consciously at first, but some deep survival instinct told me to protect myself, to build walls, to prepare for disaster. I'd been working construction and engineering for 15 years, had connections spanning 3 states, had skills that were in constant demand, had a reputation for delivering massive projects under budget and ahead of schedule while maintaining quality that exceeded specifications. So I started my own company, quietly, Carter Steel Solutions, operating under a corporate structure so complex and layered that even a forensic accountant with a law degree would need a map, a flashlight, and probably a psychology degree to unravel it. We specialized in custom metalwork for commercial buildings, the kind of precision fabrication that required expertise and commanded premium prices. And business was booming like 4th of July fireworks. 30 million in contracts lined up, profits rolling in faster than I could reinvest them, all of it completely separate from anything Megan knew about. hidden behind shell companies and trusts and legal structures that would take years to penetrate. She thought I was still just Alex the contractor, pulling down a decent six figures, but nothing spectacular, certainly nothing worth divorcing over. She had no idea I was building an empire while she was building her lies. No idea that while she was planning her betrayal, I was planning my future. Without her. I spent hours in my home office, door closed, supposedly working on bids and estimates. Really, I was documenting everything. Every dollar Megan spent, every trip she took, every late-night emergency meeting that showed up as a hotel charge on our shared credit card. James was feeding me photos and videos that made my hands shake with rage, but I filed them away with clinical precision. Evidence, ammunition, the tools I would use to dismantle her comfortable life brick by brick. During this time, I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How Megan's wardrobe had suddenly upgraded to designer labels I'd never heard of. How she spent hours getting ready for work but barely looked at me when she came home. How she talked about Daniel constantly, slipping his name into conversations like he was some kind of hero instead of the married man she was sleeping with behind both our spouses' backs. How she'd check her reflection obsessively, making sure every hair was perfect, every outfit impeccable, like she was performing for an audience that wasn't me. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after I'd first heard them together. I was sitting in our living room, deliberately not watching her get ready to go out, keeping my eyes on my laptop screen while my peripheral vision tracked her every movement. She'd been increasingly brazen lately, almost daring me to ask questions, probably frustrated that I wasn't taking the bait. Her outfit was stunning, designer everything, a dress I'd never seen before that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, paid for with money from our joint account that I'd been slowly draining into my hidden company accounts. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm going out," she announced, checking her reflection one more time in the hallway mirror, turning this way and that, making sure she looked perfect for him. Her tone was challenging, almost aggressive, hoping I'd object so she could start a fight, create drama, justify whatever she was doing in her twisted mental gymnastics. I looked up from my laptop, keeping my face neutral, expressionless, giving her nothing to work with. "Where are you headed?" She spun around, her eyes flashing with something between guilt and defiance and contempt. "Where I'm going, Alex, is not your business, not your concern, not your problem. And honestly, you've been unbearable lately, so distant and cold and wrapped up in your work. Maybe if you paid more attention to your wife instead of your precious projects, I wouldn't need to find my own entertainment." The audacity of it, the sheer unmitigated brass of someone cheating on you while making you feel like it's your fault, like you drove them into someone else's arms, that almost made me laugh out loud. Almost. Instead, I just nodded slowly, my face a mask of indifference that I'd perfected over weeks of practice. "You're right," I said quietly, my voice level and emotionless. "It's not my business. Have a good night, Megan. Don't wait up for me either." She faltered for a second, clearly expecting more of a reaction, wanting the drama and tears and accusations that would make her feel justified. But when I turned back to my laptop without another word, dismissing her like she was already gone, already dead to me, she grabbed her designer purse and left, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the windows and knock a picture frame crooked on the wall. I sat there in the silence of our beautiful home, counting slowly to 100, letting the rage wash over me and through me, and finally settle into something colder and more useful than anger. Rage was hot and impulsive. What I felt now was ice, calculation, purpose. Then I picked up my phone and texted James. "It's time. Get everything ready. We move tomorrow." His response came instantly. "About damn time. I've been waiting. Target acquired?" "Both targets," I typed back. "Maximum damage, no mercy." At 2:30 in the morning, my phone started buzzing on the nightstand next to me, the vibration obscenely loud in the silent house. Megan's name lit up the screen once, twice, 3 times, 4. I watched it ring from my position in bed, propped up on pillows, wide awake, staring at the ceiling and counting the missed calls like rosary beads. I'd been expecting this call. Daniel Hudson was a predator, but he was also a coward. The kind of man who'd take what he wanted until there was actual danger or consequence, and then he'd run. Something had gone wrong on their little adventure tonight, and now she needed me. Now she wanted the man she'd been betraying to come rescue her from the consequences of her own choices, to fix whatever mess she'd gotten herself into, to be the reliable backup plan she'd always counted on. I let it ring, let her panic, let her feel what it was like to need someone desperately and have them not be there, to be abandoned, to be ignored. After the fourth call, she started texting. "Alex, please, I need you. Emergency, please answer." Then, "I'm scared. Where are you?" Then desperately, with typos that showed her panic, "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. Please." I read every message as they came in, felt nothing but cold satisfaction settling in my chest like ice water. Whatever was happening to her, she'd earned it. She'd made her choices. Now she could live with them. I turned off my phone completely and went to sleep better than I had in months, dreaming of nothing at all. The next morning, she came stumbling in around 6, just as the sun was starting to paint the sky orange and pink. Makeup smeared down her face like war paint. One of her expensive Louboutin heels broken completely. The red sole hanging at an angle, looking like she'd had the night from absolute hell. Her eyes were red and swollen, her dress torn slightly at the shoulder, and when she saw me calmly eating breakfast at the kitchen counter, like nothing had happened, something like relief and terror crossed her face simultaneously. "Alex," she breathed, her voice hoarse like she'd been screaming or crying or both. "I called you, over and over. Why didn't you answer? Why weren't you there?" I looked at her over my coffee, taking my time, letting the moment stretch and twist, taking a slow sip before responding. The coffee was excellent. Dark roast from that boutique place downtown. "I figured where you were going wasn't my business, so where you were when you needed help also wasn't my business. Seemed logical." I paused, letting that sink in deep, watching her face process the implications. "How was your night?" "You look terrible." Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession before settling on barely controlled rage mixed with disbelief. "You bastard. You absolute bastard. I could have been hurt. I could have been in real danger. I could have been raped or killed and you just ignored me. And yet, here you are," I said calmly, taking another sip of coffee, acting like we were discussing the weather. "Safe, sound, alive, without any help from me whatsoever. Funny how that works. Funny how you managed to survive without me. Makes me wonder what other things you've managed without me knowing about." She opened her mouth to say something else, probably to continue the attack, but I stood up, grabbed my keys from the hook, and walked past her without making eye contact. "I have a meeting. Important one. Don't wait up. And Megan?" I paused at the door, looking back at her disheveled form. "Maybe you should take a shower. You smell like expensive cologne, not mine." The meeting was with Lisa Martin, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Colorado, whose reputation preceded her like a thunderstorm. Her office was all glass and chrome and sharp edges, much like her personality, located in a downtown high-rise that screamed success and intimidation. When I laid out my situation, presented my evidence, showed her the documentation I'd compiled with James's help, she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a sympathetic smile. It was the smile of a great white shark that just detected blood in the water and was calculating the fastest route to her prey. "Alex," she said, leaning back in her $1,000 leather chair, steepling her fingers like a Bond villain. "I've been practicing family law for 20 years. I've seen everything. Every kind of betrayal, every excuse, every lie. But this," she gestured at the folders spread across her desk. "This is a lawyer's dream. A cheating wife who's also involved in corporate espionage, a corrupt boss with a history of harassment, financial impropriety, and best of all, a client who actually prepared, who documented everything, who has his own money protected. You're not a victim, Alex, you're a warrior, and I'm going to help you win this war." We spent 6 hours going through everything, ordering lunch in, working through scenarios and strategies and attack plans like generals preparing for battle. The company I'd built in secret, the separate accounts I'd established, the documentation of every dollar Megan had spent, every trip she'd taken, every lie she'd told. James had been busy too, getting photos that made Lisa's eyebrows rise, recordings that made her whistle low, timestamps that documented the systematic nature of the affair, everything we needed to paint a picture of systematic infidelity and betrayal that would destroy any sympathy a judge might have for her. But Lisa wanted more. She always wanted more. That's what made her the best. "This Daniel Hudson," she said, pulling up information on her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "He's been accused before. 3 sexual harassment claims in the past 5 years, all settled quietly with NDAs and payouts that came from company funds. His company has some questionable accounting practices that I'm sure the SEC would love to examine. If we dig deep enough, if we can connect Megan to any of his corporate malfeasance, we can destroy both of them. Not just divorce them, destroy them. Financially, professionally, socially, make them radioactive." "Good, Arm," I said, and my voice was hard enough to cut Diamond. "That's exactly what I want. I want them to lose everything, the way they tried to make me lose everything." "It's going to get ugly," Lisa warned, looking at me seriously over her glasses. "Are you prepared for that? For your private life to become public? For people to take sides? For mutual friends to choose? For social media to have opinions? This will be a scorched earth campaign, Alex. There's no backing out once we start." I thought about Megan's face when she said my business wasn't her concern. Thought about her laughing with Daniel in my living room while I was out working to support us. Thought about her desperate calls that I'd ignored while she panicked. Thought about every lie, every betrayal, every moment she'd made me feel like I was crazy for noticing her distance, for questioning her late nights, for wondering why she didn't love me anymore. "I'm not just prepared," I told Lisa, and I meant every word. "I'm counting on it. Let them see. Let everyone see what happens when you betray someone who knows how to fight back." The next phase of my plan required getting close to Daniel Hudson himself. Not to confront him in a productive way, not yet, but to send a message, a warning shot, to let him know that the game had changed and he wasn't playing against some naive, cuckold husband anymore. He was playing against someone who knew how to win, someone who'd survived combat, someone who didn't believe in half measures. James helped me get into Hudson Marketing Group's building, using his contacts and my knowledge of building systems. Dressed in a maintenance uniform with a well-worn toolbox and an official-looking clipboard that I'd printed out at home, I walked right past security and into the executive floor like I'd worked there for years. Nobody questions a repairman, especially one who looks like he belongs there, who walks with purpose and confidence. I'd learned that years ago on construction sites. Confidence was the best disguise, the most effective invisibility cloak. Daniel's office was exactly what I expected from a man who valued appearances over substance. Massive mahogany desk that probably cost $50,000. Leather everything imported from Italy. Abstract art on the walls that was probably expensive, but looked like something a child had painted. View of downtown Denver that probably cost more per month in rent than most people made in a year. The man himself was on a phone call when I walked in, leaning back in his chair with his feet on the desk like he owned the world. And the look of confusion on his face when he saw me would have been funny if I wasn't so focused on my mission. He ended his call quickly, his expression shifting from confusion to irritation. "Who are you? You can't just walk in here. I'll call security." I closed the door behind me, slowly, deliberately, taking my time, letting the moment stretch like taffy. Then I walked to his desk with measured steps and pulled out a flash drive from my pocket, setting it down next to his keyboard with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden heavy silence. "My name is Alex Carter," I said, my voice low and steady and absolutely calm. "I believe you know my wife, Megan, intimately, biblically, one might say." The color drained from his face like water from a bathtub, leaving him pale and bloodless. He tried to recover, pasting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes, didn't reach anywhere close to genuine. "I don't know what you're talking about. You must be confused." I held up my hand, stopping him mid-lie. Don't insult both of us by lying. On that drive are photographs of you and Megan at 4 different Hotels over the past 3 months. Recordings of phone conversations where you discuss your weekend plans in explicit detail. Time-stamped videos of you entering and leaving those hotels at times that correspond perfectly with when Megan told me she was working late or traveling for client meetings. Credit card receipts showing you paid for rooms that cost more than some people's rent. Phone records showing over 3,000 text messages between your personal cell and her number. Emails where you discuss not just your affair, but also confidential information she forwarded from my personal files. Everything. Your entire affair documented with the kind of detail that would make a prosecutor weep tears of joy. He reached for his phone, probably to call security or his lawyer, but I shook my head. I wouldn't do that if I were you, because on that drive is also information about your creative accounting practices over the past 7 years. The offshore accounts in the Caymans that you failed to disclose to the board, the contracts you've awarded to shell companies you secretly own, the sexual harassment claims you've paid to bury with company money, the insider trading that the SEC would love to investigate, everything. 7 years of corporate fraud documented with the same detail as your affair. I've been very thorough, Daniel. Obsessively thorough. Now he looked genuinely scared, his arrogance crumbling like a sandcastle in a tsunami. What do you want? Money? Is this blackmail? I can pay you. Name your price. I almost laughed at the predictability of it. You think I want your money? You think this is about cash? No, Daniel. I want you to understand something very clearly. I'm not here to negotiate or make deals. I'm here to give you a choice, and you should listen very carefully because I won't repeat it. You can slink away quietly, end things with Megan immediately, take whatever professional consequences are coming your way without dragging her into it more than necessary, cooperate with investigators, and maybe, just maybe, I'll keep the worst of your crimes to myself. Maybe you'll only lose your job and your reputation instead of your freedom. And if I don't? He asked, trying to sound tough and failing miserably, his voice cracking. I leaned forward, placing both hands on his expensive desk, getting close enough that he could see his own fear reflected in my eyes, close enough that he could smell the coffee on my breath. Then I burn your entire world to the ground until there's nothing left but ashes and memories. Your company, your reputation, your marriage, your freedom, your future. I'll make sure every business partner, every client, every journalist in this city knows exactly what kind of man you are. I'll make sure your wife knows everything about your affairs, plural, because Megan isn't the first, is she? I'll make sure your kids know their father is a fraud and a predator. I'll testify against you personally. I'll spend every dollar I have and every connection I've built making sure you never work in this industry again. And that's before I hand everything over to the authorities, the SEC, the IRS, and let them have their turn picking through your corpse. Is that clear enough for you? I straightened up, adjusted my maintenance uniform, and headed for the door. My mission accomplished. Before I left, I turned back one more time. Oh, and Daniel, if you try to warn Megan, if you try to prepare her for what's coming, if you even think about getting ahead of this, I'll know. I have people watching you now. Good people, serious people, and I'll take it as an act of war. You really, truly, desperately don't want to go to war with me. I'm very good at war. I learned from professionals. His office door closed behind me with a satisfying click, and I walked out of that building knowing I'd just lit the first fuse on a bomb that would destroy everything they'd built together. Now I just had to wait for the explosion, and I was very patient when I needed to be. Megan was getting desperate over the next few days, like an animal that senses the trap closing, but can't quite figure out where the danger's coming from. Over the next week, she tried everything in her manipulator's toolkit. Seduction, wearing lingerie I hadn't seen in years, which I deflected with cold politeness. Anger and accusations about my distance, which I met with absolute indifference. Tears and apologies that came too late, which left me completely unmoved. She couldn't figure out what had changed, why the reliable, loving, forgiving Alex had been replaced by this stranger who looked at her like she was already dead to him, already buried, already forgotten. She started trying to access my finances, my email, my phone, becoming increasingly frantic when every door was locked, every password changed, every avenue blocked. I'd changed everything. locked everything down tighter than Fort Knox, enlisted IT professionals to make sure she couldn't hack her way in. Every time she hit a wall, I could see her frustration growing, could see the panic starting to set in, could see her realizing that something had fundamentally changed and she had no control over it. She tried to follow me one afternoon, but James alerted me immediately, and I led her on a wild goose chase that ended at a construction site where I had legitimate business, making her look foolish sitting in her car outside for 3 hours. She was losing control, and she knew it, and that fear was making her sloppy, desperate, stupid. One afternoon, I came home deliberately early to find her in my home office, frantically going through files I deliberately left there in unlocked drawers. Fake files, of course, showing a business on the verge of bankruptcy, debts I didn't actually have, accounts that didn't exist, loans coming due that were completely fictional. When she saw me standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her rifle through my things, she didn't even try to hide what she was doing. The desperation had moved past shame. "What's happening, Alex?" she demanded, her voice shrill with panic, holding up papers like weapons. "Where's the money? Why are all our accounts frozen? Why can't I access anything? What are you doing?" "What are you talking about?" I asked innocently, like I had no idea what she meant. "Everything's fine. Everything's exactly as it should be." "Don't lie to me," she screamed, her composure completely shattered now. "I tried to use my card today at Nordstrom, and it was declined. Declined. Do you know how embarrassing that was? The sales girl looked at me like I was some kind of deadbeat, and when I called the bank, they said you'd moved everything into business accounts I don't have access to. They said the house is in your name only. They said everything is in your name. When did that happen?" I shrugged, enjoying her panic more than I should have. "My company needed capital, big expansion, new opportunities. I'm sure it's just temporary. Nothing for you to worry about." Her eyes narrowed and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out the angles. "What company? Since when do you have a company? You're just a contractor. You work for other people." "Since I decided to take my career seriously," I said calmly, deliberately using her own words against her. "Something you said I should do, remember? Pay more attention to work, build something substantial for our future. Stop being so boring and predictable. I'm just following your advice, Megan. Being less boring, more exciting, building an empire while you were building your lies." She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, and maybe she was. The man who used to bend over backward to make her happy, who would have apologized for breathing too loud if it disturbed her beauty sleep, who took her criticism and complaints and turned them inward, was gone, vanished, replaced by someone she couldn't manipulate, couldn't control, couldn't even understand. And that terrified her more than anything. "You're punishing me," she said quietly, and there was real fear in her voice now. "You know something. What do you know?" "No," I replied, my voice absolutely level and cold. "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference, a very important difference. The final confrontation, the one I'd been carefully orchestrating for weeks like a conductor, preparing for a symphony of destruction, came at the Silver Peak Resort. James had gotten me the exact dates of their next business trip, intercepting an email Daniel had carelessly sent from his work account. I'd made my own reservations under a fake name, paid cash, left no digital trail. Not to catch them in the act, that ship had sailed and sunk. No, I wanted to end this thing face to face, on their territory, in the place where they thought they were safe and untouchable. I drove up to the mountains alone on a Friday afternoon, through winding roads that cut through dense pine forests and offered glimpses of snow-capped peaks that looked like they'd been carved by gods. The resort was exactly the kind of place Megan loved, all rustic luxury and exclusive amenities and the kind of price tags that made normal people gasp. 5-star restaurant, spa with treatments that cost more than car payments, VIP suites with views that photographers would kill for. It probably cost a fortune for the suite they were in, money from Daniel's company account no doubt, since Megan's personal credit was maxed out thanks to my careful manipulation of our finances. Getting into their suite was easier than it should have been, almost disappointingly easy. $50 to a housekeeper who didn't ask questions and probably did this regularly for jealous spouses and I had a key card in hand along with their room number. I waited until evening, until the sun was setting and painting the mountains in shades of orange and purple, until I knew they'd be settled in for their romantic evening, drinks in hand, guards down, feeling safe in their bubble of deception. Then I walked through their door like I owned the place, like I'd paid for it, which in a way I had. They were on the balcony, silhouetted against the sunset like they were posing for a romance novel cover. Champagne glasses catching the dying light and glittering like diamonds. Megan was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, black and slinky and expensive, probably bought specifically for this occasion with money she thought was hers. Daniel had his arm around her waist, possessive, confident, probably thinking he'd won some kind of prize. They looked like a couple in a luxury commercial, selling a lifestyle neither of them had earned, both of them parasites living off others. "Beautiful view," I said from the doorway, my voice cutting through their romantic moment like a chainsaw through silk. Megan's glass fell from her hand, as if in slow motion, shattering on the expensive balcony tiles, with a sound like wind chimes dying, champagne spreading across the stone like blood. Daniel spun around, his face going through shock, then anger, then fear in rapid succession, each emotion playing across his features like slides in a presentation. "Alex," Megan breathed, and her voice was barely a whisper, all the color draining from her face. "What are you doing here? How did you find us?" I walked into the suite slowly, taking my time like I had all the time in the world, looking around at the opulence surrounding them with theatrical appreciation. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost $1,000. Hot tub on the balcony, champagne on ice that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Just wanted to see where my money was going, where my wife's time was going. Nice place. Very romantic. The champagne, is that the Dom Perignon 08? Excellent choice. I hear it pairs well with betrayal and lies. Has notes of broken vows and shattered trust. Daniel stepped forward, trying to insert himself between me and Megan, trying to be the alpha male he pretended to be in board meetings. "You need to leave. Right now. This is private property. I'll call security." I smiled, but there was no humor in it whatsoever, just ice and calculation. "Actually, Daniel, you need to shut your mouth and listen, because right now as we speak, emails are being sent to every board member of Hudson Marketing Group detailing your financial crimes going back 7 years. By morning, you'll be fired, investigated by the SEC, and probably facing criminal charges that carry serious prison time." His face went white as fresh snow, his confident posture crumbling. "You can't do that. You're bluffing." "Already did it," I said, checking my watch for dramatic effect. "About 43 minutes ago, to be precise. My lawyer, Lisa Martin, is very efficient. You should probably check your phone. I bet it's absolutely blowing up with some pretty panicked calls from board members who are all suddenly wondering how much exposure they have to your crimes." He fumbled for his phone with shaking hands, and sure enough, the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree with notifications. Dozens of them. His hands were shaking violently as he scrolled through them, his expression morphing from denial to terror to resignation as he realized I wasn't bluffing at all, that his entire world was actually ending in real time. Megan found her voice, and it came out high and desperate. "Alex, please, can we talk about this? Alone? Just you and me? We can work this out." "Talk?" I turned to her, and whatever she saw in my eyes made her take an involuntary step back toward the balcony railing. "Like how we talked when I asked you where you were going that night. When you told me it wasn't my business? Or maybe like how we talked all those times you lied straight to my face about working late, about business trips, about loving me, about being faithful, about respecting our marriage." "I do love you," she said, tears starting to fall and ruining her perfect makeup. Real tears or fake ones, calculated manipulation or genuine panic, I didn't care anymore. I was done trying to figure her out. "You love my money," I corrected coldly. "You love the life I provided. You love having a safe backup plan while you played house with your boss. But me, the actual human being named Alex? You never loved me, Megan. You loved what I represented. Security, stability, a comfortable retirement plan. But actual love? That requires respect. And you never respected me. Not once in 7 years. Daniel, recovering some of his arrogance despite the disaster unfolding, tried to push back with bluster. You think you're so righteous? You think you're the hero here? You're just a bitter, angry man who couldn't keep his wife satisfied, who was probably inadequate in every way that matters. I was across the room before I even realized I'd moved, grabbing him by his expensive Italian collar and slamming him against the wall hard enough that the abstract art rattled on its hooks. My face was inches from his, and when I spoke, my voice was barely above a whisper, but filled with enough menace to make grown men cry. I could end you right here, right now, break every bone in your face and make it look like an accident. Snap your neck and push you off this balcony and tell the police you jumped when you realized your life was over. I've done worse to better men than you in places where no one cared about justice. But that would be too easy, too quick, too merciful. No, I want you to live through this. I want you to watch your life fall apart piece by piece. I want you to lose your company, your reputation, your marriage, your freedom, your future. I want you to lose everything, just like you tried to take everything from me. And then I want you to remember me. Every day in prison, every day of your ruined life. I want you to remember the man you thought was weak enough to betray. I let him go, and he slumped against the wall, his expensive suit rumpled, the fight completely gone out of him, replaced by pure terror. Turning to Megan, I pulled out a folder from inside my jacket and tossed it onto the coffee table where it landed with a sound like a gavel striking. Divorce papers, I explained casually. Already filed, already processed. You're getting nothing. Zero. Zilch. The house is mine, bought before we married and kept in my name only. Smart move on my part, wasn't it? The car's mine, the investments mine, the savings accounts mine, the retirement funds mine. You'll walk away with whatever's in your personal account, which last I checked was about $3,000 and dropping fast since you can't control your spending even when you're broke. You can't do this, she said, but her voice was weak, uncertain, the voice of someone who's just realized they've lost everything. It's not legal. We're married. Community property. I have rights. Already done, I replied cheerfully. Lisa Martin is my attorney, by the way. You might want to get your own lawyer, though I should warn you that most good lawyers won't touch this case. You see, you're also being investigated as an accessory to Daniel's corporate fraud, maybe even as a primary actor. Turns out, forwarding confidential emails from my personal files to your boss's competitors counts as industrial espionage. Who knew? Also, helping him hide money in offshore accounts. That's money laundering. Using my name and social security number without permission to open accounts. That's identity fraud. You've been busy, Megan. Very busy. Very illegally busy. Megan's legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the expensive couch, her perfect dress wrinkling, her perfect makeup running with tears. I never meant for any of this. I was just helping him with some documents. I didn't know what they were for. To happen, I finished for her, my voice dripping with sarcasm. But it did happen, and now you're going to live with the consequences, both of you, together, in adjacent cells if the prosecutor has any sense of irony. I walked to the door, then paused and turned back one final time. Oh, and Megan, remember that night you called me at 2 a.m? The one where you needed help, where you were scared and alone and panicking, calling over and over. The one where I didn't answer. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face in black rivers, making her look like a nightmare clown. I was awake, in bed, phone right next to me. I heard every call, read every text, every desperate plea, every apology that came too late, and I chose not to help you, chose to let you suffer, chose to let you panic, because where you were, what you were doing, who you needed, none of that was my business. You said so yourself. Those were your words, your philosophy. I just adopted it. The look on her face, that mixture of realization and horror and understanding, was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this. I walked out of that suite, out of that resort, and drove back to Denver with the windows down and the music loud, feeling lighter than I had in years, feeling like I could finally breathe again. The next few weeks were a beautiful kind of chaos, the kind of destruction that would have made Sherman's March to the Sea look like a casual stroll. Daniel's company imploded spectacularly, almost impressively fast. The board fired him immediately in an emergency meeting, voting unanimously to terminate him for cause and denying his severance package. Criminal charges followed within days like clockwork. The SEC opened an investigation. The IRS showed up with warrants. His wife filed for divorce and took him for everything he had left, which wasn't much after the lawyers and fines and restitution. She was smart, that woman. Smarter than Megan. She got out early and took what she could before the ship fully sank. Megan tried to fight the divorce, hired a lawyer with money she borrowed from her parents. But without funds for a decent attorney, she didn't stand a chance against Lisa Martin's scorched earth approach. She reached out to old friends for support, but word of the affair and her involvement in corporate espionage had spread through social media like wildfire. Turns out people don't want to associate with someone who betrayed their husband and helped steal company secrets. The same friends who'd laughed at her jokes and attended her dinner parties suddenly couldn't return her calls. Social media, that great democratizer of reputation destruction, made sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she was. What I didn't expect, what genuinely surprised me even though it shouldn't have, was how quickly Daniel would turn on her. When the prosecutors came calling with offers of reduced sentences in exchange for cooperation, when the evidence of his crimes started piling up high enough to bury him, he sang like Pavarotti at the opera. Threw her under the bus so hard she left skid marks. It was all her, he told investigators, told his lawyers, told anyone who would listen. She seduced me. She manipulated me. She was the one who provided insider information from her husband's files. She fed me company secrets that Alex shared with her. She suggested the offshore accounts. She helped structure the illegal transactions. She was my accomplice, maybe even the mastermind. I was just following her lead. Megan was blindsided, completely unprepared for the man she'd risked everything for to betray her so completely and so publicly. Her lawyer called me, practically begging for help, for testimony that would contradict Daniel's version. I laughed and hung up. She was on her own now, drowning in consequences of her own making. The investigators found emails she'd sent to Daniel, hundreds of them, forwarding documents from my home office that I deliberately left accessible once I knew what she was doing. Financial statements, business plans, contract details, competitive intelligence. She'd been actively helping him for months, maybe longer, all documented and time-stamped and utterly damning. What started as a simple affair had evolved into organized crime, and she was in it up to her neck, drowning in evidence. Her lawyer, a public defender who looked fresh out of law school and overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, tried to argue that she'd been coerced, manipulated by her powerful boss who held career advancement over her head. But the evidence painted a different picture entirely. She'd been willing, even eager, helping Daniel steal from competitors, helping him cheat clients, helping him hide money from his wife and the tax authorities, all while living in my house and spending my money and sleeping in my bed. The day she got served with criminal charges, I was in Lisa's office going over the final divorce paperwork, signing documents that would officially end our marriage and my financial obligations to her forever. Lisa's phone rang, and when she answered, the smile that spread across her face told me everything I needed to know. "That was my contact at the DA's office," she said after hanging up, barely containing her glee. "They're charging Megan with conspiracy to commit fraud, industrial espionage, money laundering, and identity theft. If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison, maybe more if they add RICO charges." I nodded, felt nothing but satisfaction. "And Daniel?" "He's facing 20 to 30, Lisa said. "Multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion, and now obstruction of justice for lying to investigators. His plea deal fell apart when they caught him in too many lies. His lawyers are scrambling. It's beautiful to watch, honestly." The house felt different after I changed all the locks, like it could finally relax after years of tension. I had contractors come in to completely renovate Megan's walk-in closet into a home gym, Her bathroom into a sauna, her office into a library. Every trace of her was stripped out, donated to charity, or in some cases just destroyed, because the satisfaction was worth more than the resale value. By the time they finished 3 weeks later, it was like she'd never lived there at all, like our marriage had been a fever dream that ended when reality reasserted itself. James came by one evening with a bottle of expensive scotch, Macallan 25 year, the good stuff we saved for special occasions. We sat on my back deck, watching the sun set over the mountains in brilliant shades of orange and purple, not saying much. We didn't need to. He understood what I'd been through, what I'd done, what it had required of me. You did what you had to do, he said finally, pouring us both generous measures. I know, I said. No regrets? Not a single one. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Carter Steel Industries landed its biggest contract yet, a $65 million deal to provide custom metalwork for a new football stadium in Phoenix. The client had heard about my reputation through industry contacts, impressed by stories of my integrity and quality work. Success, it turned out, was the best form of revenge. While Daniel and Megan's lives fell apart like paper and rain, mine was reaching heights I'd never imagined possible. I hired 80 new employees, opened offices in 5 states, started getting calls from Fortune 500 companies who wanted to work with someone they could trust. 6 months after the divorce, on a cold November evening that smelled like snow, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Megan stood there, barely recognizable as the woman I'd married. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by worn jeans and a cheap jacket from Target. Her hair hung limp and unwashed around a face that looked like it had aged a decade. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights and crushing stress. She looked broken, defeated, destroyed. Alex, she said, her voice cracking like old leather. Please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes. I stood in the doorway, blocking entry to my home, to my life. You have 2 minutes. Clock's ticking. She looked past me into the house, into the home we'd once shared, and I saw tears form in her eyes. I lost everything. My job, my apartment. My car was repossessed. My friends won't talk to me. The trial starts next month, and my lawyer says I'm probably going to prison for 8 to 12 years. Daniel's lawyers are making me out to be this evil mastermind who seduced him and forced him into criminal activity. They're painting me as a femme fatale, a manipulator, a predator. Everything is gone, Alex. Everything. And you want what from me? I asked, my voice cold enough to freeze nitrogen. Sympathy? Help? Money for a better lawyer? A character? Reference. I want you to tell them the truth, she said desperately, reaching out but not quite touching me. Tell them I didn't know what Daniel was doing. Tell them I was innocent, that I was just having an affair and didn't know about the fraud. Tell them I was a victim too. I laughed, harsh and bitter, the sound echoing off the houses around us. But that would be a lie, wouldn't it? You knew exactly what you were doing. You forwarded my confidential documents to him. You helped him steal from competitors. You helped him hide money. You opened accounts in my name without permission. You were complicit in everything. Actually, you were more than complicit. You were an active participant. You made choices, Megan. Deliberate, conscious, calculated choices. I was in love, she shouted, her desperation boiling over into anger. I wasn't thinking clearly. He promised me everything. A future, a better life. Told me we'd be together forever once he left his wife. He said I was special. He said he'd take care of me. And I believed him. I was stupid and wrong, but I don't deserve to go to prison for falling in love. You were in love, I repeated slowly, tasting the words like poison. So that makes it okay? You betrayed me, helped commit federal crimes, destroyed our marriage, ruined lives, all because you were in love? That's your defense? That's what you're going with? She fell to her knees right there on my doorstep, grabbing at my hands with desperate strength. Please, Alex, I'm begging you. Help me. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back somehow when I get out. I'll work for you. I'll sign anything. I just can't go to prison. Please. I'm terrified. I can't survive in prison. I won't make it. I looked down at her, this woman I'd once promised to love and protect forever, now broken and desperate on my doorstep like a beggar. Remembered her laughing with Daniel in my living room. Remembered her saying my concerns weren't my business. Remembered her desperate calls that I'd ignored. Remembered every lie, every betrayal, every moment of humiliation. I pulled my hands away from her grip, stepped back from her desperation. You made your choices, Megan. Now you live with them, just like I'm living with mine. You're really going to let me go to prison? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm not letting you do anything, I said flatly. You did this to yourself. You and Daniel. I just made sure you faced the consequences instead of skating away like entitled rich people usually do. I made sure justice actually happened for once. I loved you, she said, one last desperate card to play. I know I didn't show it, I know I hurt you, but I did love you. Some part of me still does. And I think part of you still loves me too. Otherwise, why would this hurt so much? I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing stirring in my chest where love used to live. You're wrong. I don't love you anymore. I don't hate you either. I don't feel anything for you at all. You're nothing to me now. Less than nothing. You're just a cautionary tale, a lesson about what happens when you betray the wrong person. Her face crumpled and she started sobbing, ugly, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. Please, Alex, I'm begging you. I have nowhere else to turn. No one else to ask. You're my last hope. The only person who can help me. No, I said simply, the word final as a gunshot. I'm not your hope. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your husband. I'm just the man whose life you tried to destroy. And now I'm the man who's walking away while you face what you deserve. You're cruel, she spat, anger breaking through the desperation like lava through rock. You're vindictive and heartless and cold. I made mistakes, but what you did to me, what you're doing to me, that's worse than anything I did to you. You're a monster. I felt my jaw tighten, felt anger flare hot for just a moment before ice reasserted control. I'm cruel? I'm heartless? You cheated on me for months, maybe longer. You brought your lover into my home while I was working to support you. You spent my money on him. You helped him commit crimes. You told me my concerns weren't my business. You made me feel crazy for noticing you didn't love me anymore. And when you needed me, when you were scared and called for help, I did to you exactly what you'd been doing to me all along. I treated you like you didn't matter, because to me, you don't. You stopped mattering the moment you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. I started to close the door, but she grabbed the frame with both hands. I'm going to tell everyone what you did, how you manipulated everything, how you planned this revenge, how you set me up. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. What kind of monster? Go ahead, I said calmly. Tell them. Tell them how I protected myself from a cheating wife and her corrupt lover. Tell them how I documented your crimes and turned you over to the authorities. Tell them how I made sure the people who betrayed me face justice. I'm sure that'll work out great for you in court. I'm sure the jury will love hearing how the victim is the real villain. Her hand dropped from the door frame, all the fight gone out of her. I hate you, she whispered. Good, I replied. Now we're even. Now you know how it feels. I closed the door in her face and locked it, heard the deadbolt click with finality, listened as her sobs slowly faded as she walked away down my driveway, out of my life, into her ruined future. Then I walked to my living room, poured myself a drink, and sat down in the silence of my home. My phone buzzed, a text from James. Saw her leaving. You good? I typed back, better than good. It's finally over. Megan went to trial 4 months later. The evidence against her was overwhelming, a mountain of documents and recordings and testimony that buried any hope of acquittal. Daniel testified against her under oath, throwing her under the bus repeatedly to save a few years on his own sentence. She was convicted on 7 out of 9 counts and sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. Daniel got 22 years. Their affair, that grand romantic adventure they thought was worth destroying lives over, had lasted exactly 7 months from start to finish. 7 months that cost them everything. Meanwhile, Carter Steel Industries continued to grow exponentially. I hired 120 new employees, opened offices in 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces. I bought a penthouse downtown with better views than Daniel ever had, started dating a structural engineer named Rachel who knew my whole story and didn't judge me for it, who understood that sometimes good people have to do hard things to survive. 2 years after the divorce, we got married in a small ceremony with close friends. No drama, no complications, just two people building something real. When Megan's sister reached out years later, asking if I could provide a character reference for her parole hearing, I declined politely but firmly. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some choices have permanent consequences. Some people don't deserve second chances because they never valued the first one. Standing on my penthouse balcony with Rachel beside me, with my company thriving and my future bright, I raised my glass one final time. Not to forgiveness or closure or moving on, to winning, to survival, to never being anyone's fool again.